Hey, good morning. My name is Jeff Auroch here at the National Weather Service in Wakefield. Going to walk through really the severe weather threat here for today. That's going to be our primary focus of what's happening today. We got some cold temperatures coming later this week, but that's not the big threat. The big threat is going to be this severe weather. We will plan on pushing out another briefing, probably right around, I'd say, 3 o'clock or so this afternoon, and I'm going to try to record that as well. So we'll try to do a 3 o'clock afternoon update to kind of see where we are with the storms, maybe how the instability and shear is playing out, and then what maybe the rest of the afternoon and evening will bring for severe weather. So look for another email along with a recorded briefing around 3 o'clock this afternoon. I will make sure to try to get that out. Just kind of jumping right into it. I just looked at what the Storm Prediction Center updated here at about 9:30, and they really have not changed the risk. So we still maintain a level 4 risk or a moderate risk here across most of the area, with areas to the east slightly lower risk here, enhanced risk that we had yesterday. This really hasn't moved that much. And the main threat is going to be straight line damaging winds as well as tornadoes. As far as what's going on out there right now, let's just take a quick look. This is just kind of the radar and satellite combined. And you can definitely see this little line area here of showers and storms that really runs up and down I-95 from north of Richmond all the way down through Emporia, extends down up through east of Raleigh here on I-95, and even down into Fayetteville and even parts of Wilmington. So this whole line here, if I kind of just move it back and forth, you can kind of see here. I'll put it in play. Well, it doesn't let me do that because I can't quite get to it. I ran into this earlier. Let me switch it over here. There we go. Kind of put it in motion here for you. You can definitely see how things, I'll just kind of slow it down. You can kind of see how things are moving from the south to the north. So I'm going to go a little bit slower here. Stuff's moving from the south to the north pretty quickly at about 40 to 50 miles an hour. And you're seeing these bands, these kind of streaks of showers and storms developing. And they really extend from Virginia all the way down to the Carolinas. You kind of see one here in the I-95 corridor, another one here that was east of Blacksburg that's kind of lifting northeast, going to kind of miss most of the area, and another line here further west over western Virginia. So we got these streaks. We got areas of showers and storms breaking out over southeast North Carolina. So that's going to lift up. And ahead of it, you see this what looks like a dark area. That's actually where the skies are clearing out a little bit. So we're getting some sunshine and some heating, which is not necessarily a great thing, increasing the instability. Even seeing some areas here of some thinning clouds in between the batches of showers and storms. So where you have the cloud thinning, you can definitely start to see some heating, which could be quite problematic as far as the potential for severe weather a little bit later on today. And I want to actually check one thing here before we keep going. I want to make sure that you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Yes, okay. Had a problem with the software in the past, so I want to keep up, make sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Let me pull down the current radar a little bit, closer in, so you can kind of see what's going on. So this is that initial little line of showers and storms that's trying to develop. Nothing severe right now. It's just moving really fast to the northeast. So we'll keep an eye on this stuff. We're going to have to watch what happens with this stuff in North Carolina as it moves to the northeast. With that clearing out here, we'll have to see if we can get any instability. We're really not expecting much severe weather really until later this afternoon and this evening. So this first round was kind of expected. Not a lot of instability in the atmosphere right now to work with. There's a lot of wind, but not a lot of instability. So right now we're okay. We're monitoring this stuff, and we'll see what happens as this stuff continues on through this afternoon. Now, looking at the threats for this afternoon, tornado, nothing really has changed. I just checked all the Storm Prediction Center outlooks, and so the tornado risk really hasn't changed much. So it really covers most of the area. Everybody's in some sort of a tornado risk here. I'll kind of show you the tornado parameters here in a minute to kind of give you an idea of the timing and locations where we could start to see some of these storms rotating. The fact that we're hatched, you see that hatching area. We'll talk about that in a second, but that means strong tornadoes. Potential for a lot of widespread wind damage, potentially, if that line can develop. So that's what you see here in the middle. And the main thing here is really no threat of hail. The hail threat is pretty low, so we're not too worried about that. Looking at the tornado threat, again, this is unchanged. So we've kind of zoomed in on the area. The hatching does mean the potential for strong tornadoes. That's like EF1 to EF2. And that's just because there's so much shear in the atmosphere. There's so much wind shear. It's already setting up. The question is going to become, are the storms going to have enough energy in them to tap that wind shear? And if those two can combine, the storms could become very problematic later on this afternoon and evening. So that's what we're kind of watching out for. Where those tornadic storms might set up and go is kind of still a little bit in question. I'll kind of look at we'll kind of take a look at the tornado parameter here. Let me pull it up over. So this is what's known as the significant tornado parameter. And this is this morning. Mainly, if there was anything going on, it would be out west. And we move it through in time, and we'll kind of take it into this afternoon. This is about 12. This is about 1 o'clock. This is here about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And what you're noticing is you're starting to see some of these yellow values, which are really getting over 2. I mean, anything over 1, we're watching. I mean, the storms definitely could start to rotate and produce tornadoes. And the values start to increase here. I'd say especially by about 2 o'clock, you're seeing some of these little yellow patches showing up. Really, even to the west of I-95, we're starting to get over 1. And along and east of I-95, we're starting to exceed that 1 value. So that's at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Moving it into about 3 o'clock, you do start to see along and east of I-95 more of these areas here where the tornado parameter, the significant tornado parameter is increasing. So we're going to have to watch out for that. Even some higher values here in northeast North Carolina. So this is as those storms are coming up out of North Carolina. If they're interacting with that instability, we're going to have to start watching out after about 2 o'clock. And these storms over northeast North Carolina, central eastern Virginia, they really could start to kind of rotate here and produce tornadoes. So we'll watch out for that. That was 3 o'clock. Here we are at 4 o'clock. The tornado parameter continues to increase, especially east of I-95. And again, down in northeast North Carolina, it's increasing. So this is that round of storms really this afternoon, ahead of the main line, ahead of that main front. So we're going to have to watch out how these storms play out. That was actually at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Here we are at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. It does show maybe the trend decreases. We'll see if that happens. It's just a matter of when those initial storms come through, do they stabilize the atmosphere a little bit? But then you'll notice as that secondary line starts to approach, the tornado risk actually increases once again. And this is by about 7, 8 o'clock. And this would be, I'd say, mainly, Richmond, south and east. We'll see this tornado parameter does increase again this evening. So this would be about 8 o'clock this evening. Here we are at about 9 o'clock. And then it eventually moves offshore around 9 o'clock or so. So kind of going to have to watch this. Gives you an idea of how things might evolve, at least as far as the risk is concerned. So even though there's no risk now, we're still expecting that risk to increase a little bit later on this afternoon. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of the tornado risk and why we have it here. Looking at the straight line winds, so this is your straight line wind risk. This is pretty high on the scale. Storm Prediction Center has us in that 60 to 74% probability of damaging wind. Again, there's just so much wind in the atmosphere. If we can pull some of that strong wind from off the surface down to the surface, we can create quite a bit of wind damage. The winds aloft, just off the surface, are going to be like 70 miles an hour. They're already increasing. So if you can pull that wind down from, let's say, 1,500 feet or so and get that wind to hit the ground, you can definitely get some pretty significant wind damage. So we have that really high probability of potential straight line wind damage. The hatching that you see here with all these little tick marks basically means that the winds could be around hurricane force, about 70 to 75 miles per hour or greater. So a little bit more than maybe your typical garden variety, thunderstorm with 50 to 60 mile per hour severe wind in it. This could be about 70 to 75 and stronger. Again, the timing for this, anywhere from around, I'd say, noon until 9 p.m. The tornado threat was a little bit shorter, I'd say like 2 to 8, where this can kind of run from, let's say, noon to about 9 is kind of the wind risk here. So we'll see how that plays out. Could be a couple rounds of wind as far as, those storms coming up from the south this afternoon. Any of those could probably produce a little bit of wind, and that main line comes in from the west, and we'll see what happens there. That may even produce more wind later on this evening. Now, trying to time this out and how this is going to play out is a little bit tricky. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over, make sure this works. So I'm going to move it over and make sure you guys can see it. Looks like you can. All right, yeah. So we're going to step through here what the radar might look like. This is simulated reflectivity. This is one of the runs that's doing a pretty good job capturing the storms in the I-95 corridor and extending south down into North Carolina, and they move it north a little bit so our friends in Northeast North Carolina can see. So it's doing a pretty good job with that. So, and you got this stuff to the west that Blacksburg was warning on earlier, and then they stopped issuing warnings, and that line also extends down to the Carolinas. So this is about 11 a.m. this morning, 10 to 11, doing a pretty good job. Did this earlier where it wants to freeze on me. Let me see here. Let me see if I just do it like this. It doesn't want me to be able to use the controls. So I'm going to do this. Once again, the technology is kind of messing with me here. All right, let's call the reflectivity back up again. All right. Apologize for that. Yep, now I can use my controls again. So this is about 11 o'clock this morning. We were just looking at this image right here. So this is 11 o'clock. Again, you kind of see it doing a pretty good job getting that stuff in the I-95 corridor. As we progress through the day, that stuff does push east. It might intensify. This is getting about 1 o'clock this afternoon. So we'll have to see how the afternoon goes on as this stuff pushes east. You definitely start to see more of a cellular nature here in the showers and storms here by the time you get to about 2 o'clock. So that's why we're thinking 2 o'clock on, we're going to have to watch basically the 95 east to see what happens. As you kind of continue through the afternoon, this stuff just kind of keeps redeveloping and kind of gets its act together through the afternoon. This is 4 o'clock this afternoon. So you can kind of see what's going on here. Don't take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. I mean, the storms may not be in this exact location at this time. It's just giving you an idea of the flavor that, basically along and east of I-95 is going to have a couple rounds maybe of storms kind of here through the afternoon. And the main line is still way back here to the west to set up. And there could be a little bit of a break in between the two. So that's what we're going to have to watch out for to see if that develops. This gets us into about 5 o'clock this evening. Here about 6 o'clock, this is where you're maybe starting to see a little bit of a break where the stuff maybe over Hampton Roads in Eastern Virginia is starting to move east, but it's still moving across Maryland Eastern Shore here by about 6 o'clock this evening. And then maybe we get a little bit of a break, and then here comes the actual front. Now, this model here, when that front comes through, doesn't show it being super intense. It's still a pretty good little wall of wind. And ahead of that line, you're going to have some pretty good winds coming out of the south. And when this thing comes through, you could see some pretty strong winds. Now, other models are a bit more robust with this line. So this is just a different model, same flavor. You're just noticing it does look more intense. And as this continues to push east, that line holds together and moves across, all of Eastern Virginia. So we'll have to see what happens with this line. Everything kind of has this flavor with this stuff, in the east. And we're looking at a different model simulation here. And we're going to have to watch out for these things if they start rotating as the shear increases this afternoon. But then the models do suggest there could be a little bit of a break in this evening. This is around, I'd say 7 o'clock or so, 6 to 7 o'clock. So how fast does this first round get offshore? How much of a break is there between the two? And what is this last line, this last hurrah, when it comes through? How intense is it? So that's what we'll be watching out for. So again, just some waves of showers and storms as the day goes on. And this thing's well offshore by tonight. This is actually about, I'd say 10 o'clock. The line is way offshore by then or so. So that's kind of the way it looks overall. Just kind of keep an eye on your radar app. Keep an eye on the warnings that we're issuing. I remind folks that we do have those impact-based warnings. So, if we issue tornado warnings, it could be a considerable tornado warning that goes out. If we think it could be a more intense tornado. If we see anything with debris, we'll confirm that it's on the ground based on debris signatures. So keep an eye on the warnings. Keep an eye on the verbiage in the warnings, whether it's confirmed tornado, radar indicated, considerable tornado, all that type of information goes into your warnings. Same thing with severe thunderstorm warnings. We have base severe thunderstorm warnings. If we issue considerable severe thunderstorm warnings, that's for winds of 70 miles per hour or greater. And if we end up issuing destructive severe thunderstorm warnings, that's for winds of 80 miles per hour or greater. So we do have different categories for your severe thunderstorm warnings. So again, just kind of pay attention to the warnings we're issuing, read the verbiage in them to get an idea of how intense that severe storm or tornado might be based on what we're putting into the warnings themselves. As far as timing of the precipitation, we kind of already talked about that. This was just part of our briefing, but going to be off and on showers and storms for most of the day, all the way through this evening. We did issue a wind advisory, so we did add this morning to some of our northeast North Carolina counties with that south wind. We did Southside Hampton Roads, and we already had Eastern Shore in there earlier. And that's really for those winds right ahead of the front, especially this afternoon. I'd say probably from about, let's say 4 o'clock till about maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Those south winds may really howl pretty good. They may get pretty strong and start gusting up to about 45 miles per hour. And that's why we have the wind advisory here, just kind of in these areas right now. I think we'll still see some wind gusts in the 40s, even on the peninsula, and probably even in the middle peninsula, northern neck. Even Richmond, I wouldn't be shocked to see some gusts to 40 or so. But I think right here along the coast, that's kind of where things really set up the strongest. Some of the stronger wind signals are showing up. So that's why we have the wind advisory there. But again, if you look at a lot of the cities, everybody, Petersburg's getting gusts close to 40, and Portia is getting close to 40. It's just Elizabeth City. I mean, we're talking about maybe getting close to 45 miles an hour up in Accomack, maybe getting up to about 47, 48 up there in Cambridge, Maryland, Cape Charles about 45. So that kind of that area in the eastern sections of our forecast region, that's where you may start to see some of these stronger gusts. Even Ocean City, maybe some gusts getting close to 50 miles an hour, same as Salisbury. So that's where the winds really crank up. And again, if you notice timing for that, it's going to be after 3 o'clock. I mean, I'd say about 3 or 4 o'clock on till about, let's say, 9 o'clock. That's probably where we're going to see some of our most intense winds. A little bit further in, like the I-95 corridor, if we look here in Richmond, the winds start to pick up. I'd say by about 3 o'clock, you start getting those gusts to maybe 35 to 40, and it may gust to 40 about 6 o'clock and up to about maybe 8 or 9 o'clock. And I think the winds will come down about 8 o'clock. Notice that once the front comes through, see how the wind shifts here? Right around midnight and later, the winds are not that strong behind the front. So that's kind of the good thing. It looks like most of the strongest wind is going to be right ahead and along the front. And then after the front actually comes through later tonight, the winds actually decrease as that front comes through. So that's actually a good thing. It's not like we have another big punch of high wind behind the front. It's just the south wind ahead of it that we're going to have to watch out for. It's going to get pretty gusty. Other thing I want to mention here, because I got this question before, is that the winds that you're seeing predicted here, that's just environmental wind. That's just if you go outside anytime this afternoon, evening, that's what we expect the wind gusts to be, right? So this is not including the thunderstorm winds. So if a thunderstorm comes through, you get a line of storms come through, those winds inside the storms could gust up to, let's say, 60 to 70 miles an hour or even stronger. So this is not forecasting thunderstorm wind. This is just how windy the day is going to get. So this afternoon and evening, this is just what kind of wind we're forecasting. Thunderstorms would be higher wind than this. So just kind of wanted to clarify that because that question has come up. I just want to I'll just highlight the cold shot of air. So once this front comes through, I mean, tomorrow morning we have lows in the I'd say 20s to maybe low 30s, but then we really get cold Wednesday morning with lows well into the 20s and right around 30 as you get towards the coast, and highs only in the 40s for the next couple of days, Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's a good front. I'm going to have a good hard freeze here for the kind of a early springtime event. But again, nothing just noteworthy, nothing too extreme. On the marine side, we do have gale warnings now in effect for pretty much everywhere except for the upper reaches of the rivers. We did add the lower, the James River is now in that, as well as the Currituck Sound. We added those to the gale warning this morning, mainly for those southerly winds, gusting up to 35 to 40 knots. And so kind of see it day by day here. So everything in red, that's your gales for today. This is a small craft advisory conditions, maybe still going on a little bit here on Tuesday with that west wind on the bay. Probably going to be marginal small craft advisory conditions, but probably west maybe 15 to 20 knots. And that's why you see the area there in orange and also off the coast. Could be kind of right around small craft advisory conditions. But you notice those go away for Wednesday and Thursday. In fact, the Thursday there's pretty light wind everywhere. And maybe just a little bit of a breeze picks up again for Friday. So here in the middle is a probability for gale conditions, and this has continued to increase. And so everywhere in orange is kind of where you would expect to see gales, and red is just a very high probability of gales. So that does cover all of the Chesapeake Bay. You see how the lower James is now getting captured into some pretty good probability of gale force winds. And obviously the coastal waters are all red for the probability of gales. So gale warning, gale probabilities have increased. these are just some of the winds we expect this afternoon. Again, this is environmental wind, so thunderstorms would be a little bit stronger. So a lot of gusts about maybe 35 to 40 knots, maybe even some gusts up there getting about 44 knots, close to 45 knots, especially in the northern waters. But pretty good wind today, pretty good gust factor. Wind could be really gusty once we get about 2 o'clock and later. So with that wind kind of ramping up, ramping down, ramping back up again with a high gust factor. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. But that's why we see so many gusts at 35 to 40 knots. And so sustained winds, right around, I'd say 25 to 30 knots for the most part, sustained, and gust into the 40s. That's what we're looking at. And again, once that front pushes through, those sustained winds are right around, I'd say 15 to 20 knots by Tuesday morning, gust up to about 20 to 25 knots. So not as much wind, more small craft advisory conditions behind the front for Tuesday morning, and the winds continue to kind of decrease as we get into Wednesday there. But looks like we will see small craft advisory conditions through most of the day Tuesday, with conditions improving there on Wednesday and Thursday with much less wind. Wave height wise, they're already starting to build up. We'll build up to about 7 to 10 feet on the coastal waters, about, I'd say 4 to 6 feet on the bay, especially as those winds start to crank up this afternoon. And some of your max wave heights offshore may get to be around 12 feet or so, and maybe even 15 to 18 feet offshore of Ocean City with those strong south winds. Peak waves on the bay, probably about 6-7 feet. Maybe we can see some 6-7 footers when that south wind really increases this afternoon. And that is actually it for this briefing. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.